truth universally acknowledge that every D&D character must have a tragic backstory, and the Mighty Nein are no exception. Hello, I'm Luna, your local Critical Role lore nerd, and these comics made me cry. Yep, I'm not ashamed to admit it, especially this one. Despite owning these books for a really long time, I hadn't actually read them. I think I was just kind of saving them up for like a special occasion. So one night when I had a very rare evening to myself, I settled in to do a bit of a binge read of all of these comics. These many. So I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts about these comics, but before we get into that, wait, what's happening? Hello? Hello, is anyone there? Hello? I think I've been spliced. I think it was the malware. Gotta hack back in. Sorry about that, but today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN allows you to surf the internet with peace of mind, protecting your data and online identity. Say goodbye to pesky internet trackers and companies collecting all of your private data, and say hello to non-stop security across your devices, whether they're Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, or Linux. Linux? By clicking the link in the description or heading to nordvpn.com/Luboffin, you can get an exclusive deal, plus it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. NordVPN is the fastest VPN out there, and you can even use it when traveling with over 5,000 NordVPN servers located in 60 countries. It allows you to access content that normally wouldn't be available in your location, such as streaming services and videos. Personally, I've been using it to watch all the juicy British period dramas that I can't watch here in Australia. Plus, if you find a video game that you want to play that's not available in your location, no problem. Simply sign up at nordvpn.com/Luboffin and change your location and get games and prices not available in your region. Ta-da! It will even protect you while gaming by helping you avoid DDoS attacks that significantly slow down your connection, plus you'll be protected while using public Wi-Fi networks, ensuring you stay safe from password attacks and malware. To get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan, plus a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee, head to nordvpn.com/Luboffin, or you can click the link in the description. Back to the video. So if you're not familiar with these comics, the Mighty Nein Origin series provides prequels to the characters of the Mighty Nein, and Critical Role actually has a few comic series, including the Vox Machina Origins and Tales of Exandria, which is a series covering various NPCs, including Anna Ripley, Artigan, and the Bright Queen. I've actually made a bonus video talking about this Bright Queen comic over on my Patreon. If you want to check it out, you can find that at the Patreon link in the description. So for my thoughts about these, there will be some Campaign 2 spoilers in this video. I'll try and keep things to like a minimum, but just keep that in mind. I'll also be looking at some of the specific panels and like events in these comics, so just keep that in mind. It will be a little bit spoilery. I'll be covering Jester, Fjord, Yasha, Nott, and Caleb. We're actually still waiting on Beauregard and Caduceus to be released. Plus, when I did this like little reading binge, I realized that I don't actually have Mollymog yet. I must have just like forgotten to order it when it came out. So anyway, it's in the post on the way to me now, but I'm gonna save that one and I'll do it with Beau and Caduceus when those come out. All right, grab a drink from the Burra Bar and let's dive in.
I'm asking you to open your heart to chaos.
Aside from Caduceus, Jester's backstory is amongst the most happy. The comic follows her life growing up in the opulent, lavish chateau with her mother, Marion Laveau, the ruby of the sea, the best lay ever. The art is by Hunter Severn Bunyan and colors are by Kathy Lett, and I think the cover is just such a perfect representation of Jester's vibe. It's cheeky and mischievous, the colors are gorgeous, and I love the illustration on the front of like her notebook of all these sort of integral characters in her backstory, like her mother, Blood, Young Sharp, and of course, the Traveler. In fact, all of the art and character designs in this comic are just gorgeous, and I am especially obsessed with baby Jester. She's just so freaking cute. I just want to squish her cheek so bad. The comic outlines Jester's somewhat lonely childhood as she's kept inside the lavish chateau due to her mother's agoraphobia. All Jester wants is a friend, and when she felt the most alone, the Traveler appeared to her as a boy about the same age as her, and the two get up to lots of mischief. Honestly, I've always felt that the Traveler has had a bit of a sinister undertone, especially given what we later learn about him and what we've seen of him, and there's just something about him appearing to Jester at such a young age. Like, the first depiction of him, I think, is when she's about 13, and then he sort of ages up along with her. I don't know, there's just something a little bit icky about that to me, and I always thought that the rest of the Mighty Nein were justified in their suspicion of the Traveler, because it is kind of weird. And I think Laura playing Jester also really leaned into that vibe too. Like, she knew that it was a bit weird as well, that Jester had sort of wholeheartedly devoted herself to someone like this. The comic also depicts the event that led to Jester leaving the lavish chateau.
I'm kind of in trouble in Nicodramus.
What did you do?
Well, cause I sort of played a prank on this guy who was seeing my mom.
What kind of a prank?
Wow. So the traveler taught me how to make myself look like other people, right?
Okay.
So I made myself look like my mom, and then I lured him out onto our balcony, and he was wearing nothing but like this girdle of hers. And then I locked the door. And I thought that was funny, you know.
That
it looks
is
really
fun. That's
good in
pretty
my
funny.
sketchbook.
So he was
And
just
then-
out there in a girdle.
Yeah, which is no big deal. But then I found out he's kind of a lord.
But it gives us a bit more insight into this event, outlining Lord Sharp's role in Nicodranus in more detail and why he was such a dangerous man to cross and why Jester had to leave. It also sheds some light on why Marion continued to see him as a client despite her dislike for him when, as the best lay ever, she really could take any clients she wanted. But I'll leave that there so you can discover those reasons yourself in the comic. Overall, I thought this was a really solid opener to the series and just made me love Jester even more. Alright everyone, prepare the tissues for this one. It's Yasha's story.
I know one day I want to go back there and... I don't know where she was buried, but that's... I have so many flowers to bring to her.
As you can tell from the cover of this comic, which was done by William Kirkby with colours by Diana Sousa, the focus is on Yasha's relationship with her first love, Zoala, and it is a story of forbidden love because as we learned in Campaign 2,
When you become a part of the tribe as time goes on, you are given a mate. But I fell in love with someone else that was not chosen for me. The punishment for that is death. They killed her, and I ran away.
this story is rendered out in tender, heartbreaking scenes between the two as Yasha struggles with her duty to the tribe and her love for Zoala. I think Yasha always had one of the more mysterious backstories, apart from, like, I guess Molly, but we got to see how she found her way to the tribe in the first place when she was adopted into it and given the name Yasha by the Sky Spear, who was her adopted mother and matriarch of the tribe. But I feel like mother was really just a title. There was not a whole lot of, like, mothering being done, it looks like. The Sky Spear cuts like a really imposing figure in all of these scenes and a sort of like a sort of overlooming presence. And it feels like in these pages, Yasha really didn't get much love at all as a child. Like, there is some hint that perhaps her adopted father might have been, you know, like, kind to her. But basically, the Sky Spear just puts a lot of pressure on her to always be training and learning and getting stronger. And so this adds even more juice to the heartbreak when we see Zoala treating her with, you know, kindness and gentleness, perhaps for like the first time in her life. After the devastating end to Yasha and Zoala's short-lived happiness, scenes which did absolutely make me cry like a baby, we get a little glimpse into the time period between when she leaves the tribe, leaves them for dead, throws them off a bridge, and wanders in the land, which is when Oban finds her. And honestly, I forgot how much I hated Oban until I saw him portrayed in this comic. Like, ugh, get out of here, you big creep. So gross. I still think the storyline with Oban was such an incredible way to keep Yasha present in the story when Ashley was not physically able to be there, so I tip my hat to Matthew Mercer, sir. I really enjoyed the story of this one and the insight into Yasha's tribe. It actually reminded me a lot of the tribes of Horizon Zero Dawn, which is one of my favorite games. And the scenes with Yasha and Zoala in particular are just so beautiful. There's so much warmth there. Oh man, I'm so glad that Yasha is obviously happy now, but oh, it's heartbreaking looking back on these scenes and just wondering what life would have been like for her if this whole situation had ended differently.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Why?
Couldn't afford a root canal?
That would have been a better excuse. When I was younger, they used to make fun of my teeth. And kids can be cruel, so I decided to take away the target that was most easily available for them.
Fjord's story has art from Selena Espirito with colours again by Diana Sousa, and it depicts his upbringing in an orphanage under the cruel reign of Master Grankton. Cruelty is a big theme in this book as we see Fjord living a pretty miserable life, not only being thoroughly mistreated by Grankton, but also by the other boys of the orphanage who, like, shunned, humiliated, and assaulted him. Some of those scenes are extremely visceral and bloody and really hammer home how much of an awful place this was. I really love the design of teenage Fjord here. He's so, like, gangly, like he's all limbs, you know, in the way that teenagers often are. And I think in particular his teeth also seem kind of oversized for his face, which contributes and like emphasizes this idea of him being uncomfortable in his body and wanting to hide his physical form. And we of course see this, like we see this in the comic the first time that Fjord filed down his teeth. Ugh, and like it talks about how painful that was. Just, oh, it like, you know how there's certain sounds and things that like give you that teeth on edge feeling? Just, oh. Don't like it. This is something that Fjord continued to do into his adult years before he sort of finally became comfortable with himself enough to let those tusks grow back in. We also get to see more of Sabian, a figure that Fjord talked about in Campaign 2, but we never actually got to meet. A figure who would come to set Fjord on the path to finding Uk'otoa. Fjord eventually leaves the orphanage to sail on the Tide's Breath along with Sabian and their new captain, Captain Vandren. I really enjoyed seeing this relationship fleshed out more in the comic and seeing Fjord learn a lot of those skills that we see him wielding with the Mighty Nein. Overall, this was a really enjoyable read. I think it was probably the most sort of like straightforward story out of the bunch of them, and there weren't any like major revelations, but it was fun seeing some of those major figures like the captain, you know, from Fjord's life in these beautiful illustrations.
Well, what you're seeing is not how I really look. It's an illusion. I look much different, and I'm afraid you won't like it, and that's okay, because it's not me. It's what they turned me into.
It's no secret that Veth and Nott is one of my favorite characters from the Mighty Nein. I really connected with her struggle around motherhood and like duty to one's family, as well as the need for independence and freedom. So I was bracing myself going into this book, expecting it to completely shatter me, and it did. The comic opens on Veth as a young girl being sort of hounded and chased by her brothers, and there's this truly awful scene which explains her fear of water. Like, we did have an explanation in the campaign. I think I always assumed that it was because of what happened with the hag, but this is a scene that happens actually much earlier and showing then that the hag was kind of tapping in to these fears that she already had. But after that kind of scene, the comic moves into the domestic life with Yasha and baby Luke, and honestly, I just love these panels so much when they were all together and happy and nothing bad had happened to any of them. I really love all the little details inside Yes's workshop, and you can feel a lot of the like love between the family in these panels. I will say, I think Veth's character design in this comic is really interesting because it feels very different to the portrait that we got in Campaign 2 of Veth. But honestly, that's one of the things that I really like about Critical Role, is that they're not afraid to have different canon character designs, which sort of just opens up the world a lot and gives a lot of fodder to fan artists and cosplayers. And I don't know, I just think it's really cool that we get to see so many interpretations of these characters. This is a game of imagination after all, and while we do have the character portraits, you know, these characters exist in our minds. Well, until they get animated. As not described in the campaign, we see the resulting goblin attack and the family's abduction, and then how Veth became Nott. I think there are some extra details in here that we didn't hear about in the campaign, so I'll leave that for you to like discover when you read the book. But then the comic goes on to show Nott arriving at the hag's house, and I love the design for Ishana. Like, her arms are just way too long. They're just, like, the proportions are so weird. When I was reading it, I was like tracing the arm, being like, where does the arm go? It's very creepy. It's very cool. We get a couple of pages as well showing Veth's transformation into Nott. And I don't know, there's just something about the colors for these that I really love. This page here is my favorite, and it's the one that like actually made me break down and cry. It says, "I see myself as Yasha sees me, just this once. Pretty, elegant, loved." I just love Veth so much, and I think her story is pretty special. I don't know if that's controversial. I feel like there are some Veth haters out there, but I am not one of them.
You cherish your family so much. And, I suppose I enjoyed being seen as I should have been. Or could have been.
I just go up and give him a hug.
There is a reason I have never told you about my mother and father.
All right, strap in because I have left the most tragic backstory for last. It's everyone's favorite sad wizard. Yeehaw! It's everyone's favorite sad wizard, Caleb Widogast. This cover art shows Caleb looking so young and sad, and I just want to give him a hug. The restraints on the chair as well are so sinister, and like throughout the book we sort of see that time when he's being trained by Trent and all the awful things that they underwent to get that training. You can also see in the background 2 other figures, Astrid and Ealdwulf. There is actually a 4th figure too, which is Trent. You can't really make it out under the text, but you can see it a lot more clearer in the artist sketches provided at the end of the book. The comic, which has art by Selena Espirito and colours by Diana Sousa, opens with Caleb, or I guess I should say Bren, sitting an exam for the Solstice Academy in his rural hometown, Blumenthal. There are some beautiful scenes with his parents and his pet cat, and I really love the detail that he gets his ginger hair from his mother, even though that's also like breaks my heart into a million pieces. We've heard his home described a few times in campaign 2, and I think the artist has done such a beautiful job of capturing it. It's run down and small, but there is so much warmth in these pages, which really contrasts with a lot of the sort of cooler tones, as well as like the bloody tones that we see later when Bren is at the Solstice Academy, along with his fellow students Astrid and Ealdwulf. Hands down, my favorite thing about this comic is that it does not shy away from the intimate relationship that these 3 had. I mean, it just illustrates it with like no room for misinterpretation. I really appreciate that because, you know, while their thrupplehood was already canon, having it just flat out drawn like this really solidifies it and gives naysayers like no leg to stand on. Because like there are always still people who are like, oh, you know, you're reading too much into it. It wasn't like that. You know, they were roommates. But no, there's no denying it with these pictures. I also love that it, well, I don't actually love it because it's horrible, but I like that the story touches on the horrific things that both Astrid and Ealdwulf also had to do to their families. You know, they are just as messed up as Caleb is by these experiences, but they just ended up going down a very different path to him. One of my favorite spreads in this is the double page, which depicts the awful moment when Bren, or I guess I'm just gonna say Caleb because that's what we know him as, but when Caleb realizes what he's done to his family, and we see this kind of fractured, disjointed moments, which feels very in keeping with the way that we heard Caleb's story unfold during campaign 2, which was sort of in these like flashes and moments as he was relaying, you know, that trauma, as Liam was describing those visions. This particular part of the panel just like sent me absolutely sobbing. Like, how dare you? Just, how dare? If you've read these comics, I would love to hear what you thought about them in the comments. Which one was your favorite? What are some of your favorite moments? And don't forget to check out my bonus video where I talk about the Tales of Exandria, the Bright Queen, at my Patreon, which you can find in the description. Thank you again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Make sure you head to nordvpn.com/Luboffin for an exclusive deal. And if you're a fellow diehard Mighty Nein fan, you might like to check out this discussion right here of the Mighty Nein one-shot Echoes of the Solstice. Bye!